Assalamu alaikum. This video will be an introduction to 20th century fiction. The idea ديال هذا الموديول هو that you are supposed to read one body of fiction, one work of fiction written in the 20th century. You're gonna read it, analyze it, and finally produce a writing about it in the exam. Now, the 20th century, what has characterized this time in history is the two world wars. كلنا عرفنا باللي القرن العشرين هو فاش World War I and World War II. And so we're gonna have a little look in something which has characterized or qualified this time period. Now we want to briefly talk about the lost generation, which is not only واحد literary movement ولكن حتى represents a group of young American writers who came of age during World War I. يعني واحد group of young authors, young writers in America اللي كانوا young adults في الوقيته مورا الحرب العالمية الأولى. A term ديال lost generation also includes people اللي كبروا في الوقيته مورا الحرب العالمية الأولى. يعني not only the authors, most people كيستعملوا term to talk about young people generally اللي كبروا في the group. Ernest Hemingway was one of the most prominent writers or figures of the lost generation authors. يعني هو واحد من the most symbolic writers ديال the lost generation, alongside T.S. Eliot, Cummings, Scott Fitzgerald. هادو كلهم كانوا معروفين authors ديال the lost generation. When we say lost generation, what we mean by lost هي alienation or estrangement that this generation has felt after the war. يعني they felt like strangers. They were lost in the sense that they saw so much brutality. يعني شافوا the terrors and the horrors ديال war ديال الحرب و they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't know ما كيشوفوا حتى حاجة مزيانة مازال in life or in the world. That's why they were lost. That's why they called them the lost generation. What they had in common, يعني واحد الحاجة اللي كانوا كيشتركوا فيها كاملين هاد authors ديال lost generation, is that in their writings في الworks ديالهم they pointed their fingers at some of society's flaws. يعني negative things, negative traits ديال society, such as مثلا extravagant spending and excessive drinking. يعني people wanted to spend a lot of money, have fun, feel pleasure, drink a lot of alcohol. The thing is, علاش كانوا كيديروا هادشي, علاش people wanted to do these things is to distract themselves from هاد terrible times, ولكن still it led to a lot of terrible things. What these writings ديال هاد authors confirmed, ولا شنو كانت كتبين, what it portrayed, what it illustrated, was that people who were affected by the war, people اللي شافوا the war, اللي عاشوا فيها, were in fact lost souls. يعني they had absolutely no idea how to proceed and how to live normally. Back to the novel, A Farewell to Arms. The story plays during World War I and focuses on the love affair between American ambulance driver Frederick Henry and British nurse Catherine Barclay. Throughout the novel, the devastating effects of war on individuals and their relationships are portrayed. The characters struggle with their own mortality and the futility of war. يعني in the story, in A Farewell to Arms, first of all, the story happens في الوقيته ديال الحرب العالمية الأولى. يعني it happens in the war, and it tells the story كتعاود القصة ديال two young adults, Frederick Henry and Catherine Barclay. Also, it portrays, it shows us the effects the war has on these people. يعني كيفاش كيتعاملوا معها وكيفاش it changes them. What we can say then is that the characters in the story, يعني هاد the characters in A Farewell to Arms, also represent the lost generation. هما جزء من هاد lost generation. Why? Seeing as they as well find their adulthood flourishing in the middle of a wartime. يعني حتى هما الشباب ديالهم, the young adulthood ديالهم happens in the middle of the war. So هما represent young people who are part of this lost generation. This will be a little peek at the author. They say, as a student of literature, you have to know who Ernest Hemingway is. You have to, you must. You have to have read at least one of his works. يعني كيقولوا as a literature student خصك تعرف شكون هو Ernest Hemingway, and you also خصك تكون قريتي على الأقل one work of his. So who was he? Who was Ernest Hemingway? Ernest Hemingway was an American novelist and short story writer اللي ربح the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1954. Now, what characterized his works? Some qualities اللي كنلقاهم في all of his works altogether هو his interesting writing style. هاد the writing style ديالو is known for being straightforward, concise and realistic. What does this mean? Straightforward as in he doesn't talk around anything. إلا عنده ما يقول he says it straightforward كيقولها بواحد الطريقة مباشرة. Concise meaning it has a simplicity and it's simple and it doesn't take too complex sentences. يعني إلا شتي writing ديالو, if you look at the sentences, the way it's structured, it looks pretty simple. Sometimes what is more complex is the meaning behind the things, not the actual writing. And it is realistic. Ernest Hemingway was never known to use too much fantasy. His works were always rooted in reality. يعني الأعمال ديالو were always عندهم واحد العلاقة بالواقع, واقعيين. He published novels, short stories, essays, memoirs, and so on. And during World War I, هو براسو كان a young soldier. He was يعني خدام في الحرب تا هو كان a young soldier تما. He was awarded multiple medals. During World War I, Hemingway حتى هو كان taking part in the war. He was awarded multiple medals such as a silver medal and a bronze star for courage and valor. يعني he was injured in the war and he won medals for bravery, for courage. This is why the novel A Farewell to Arms اللي حتى هي كتهضر على experiences ديال a young soldier in the war was highly praised for its realistic touch on the war. يعني critics were always impressed by how realistic كيفاش هاد الكتاب A Farewell to Arms عنده واحد التouch واقعي when talking about the war. And this is most likely because Hemingway himself كان في الحرب, يعني عاش هادوك the things that he tells about, that he writes about. Seeing as this is an introductory video, يعني عاد غادي نبداو في ال actual content ديال هاد الموديول. This is a short outline ديال what we're gonna go through. So we'll first have an insight into the novel, يعني we will talk about the novel. Then we will look at the novel in fragments, يعني غادي نقسمو the story into smaller pieces and talk about it. Afterwards غنهضرو على the elements of the story, and then the themes, and at last غنهضرو على some key takeaways, يعني important things to remember, and symbols اللي تذكروا in the novel. It seems we have reached the end ديال هاد introductory video. Next time we will be taking a first look at the novel.